Hey guys, my name is Sjele, or Sjele, and in this video we'll be going over all of the bosses in Sepulcher of the first ones, and how they fare up against each other, how fun they are, what made them difficult, and what potentially made them easy. So first off, we got the Vigilant Guardian. This was a very difficult first boss. It was tuned extremely hard in terms of the damage intake. All the abilities hurt a lot, and I don't even believe that it was killed on the first day. Now this is largely contributed by the fact that all of the top-end guilds were doing heroic splits well into the first Mythic week. So very interesting to see that they made the first boss so difficult. It did receive a ton of nerfs, and now it's pretty easy boss, but not too bad. Was kind of afraid that it would go into be a Hellfire Citadel first boss kind of thing, but it didn't end up being that boring. So overall a fairly good fight. Rated about a 3 out of 5. So next up is Skolex, the Insatiable Ravener. Kind of surprised that there was a single target DPS check so early in the raid, but overall, once you had a couple of 4 sets rolling and you got to min-max the fight, it did not present a lot of challenges. So overall, a pretty easy fight, not too engaging, probably rated 2 out of 5 for me. Next up is Artificer Xy'mox. This fight is actually very interesting. I really like the idea of the portals and how you can utilize them. We did end up using Warlock gateways to get over to the other platforms, while you could potentially send the guy with the portal to with the gateway over to the other platforms. But overall, I think that it was a pretty good designed fight. And it had, on Mythic especially, it had a lot of interesting overlaps where it was really fast-paced and you were jumping back and forward between the portals. And I think one of the highlights of the early bosses for me. So I would rate this about a 4 out of 5. Next on the non-tier bosses is going to be Dausegne, the Fallen Oracle. This fight is pretty good. There's some very interesting interactions with the geometry and just with how the halos come out towards each other. So it can be, you can predict very easily how it's going to go and how you can maximize your dodging of the halos, especially on Mythic difficulty, where you splash around yourself in a 3-yard radius when you cross the halos. Dodging them becomes a big point in order to kill the fight, especially when you're going into the raid without super high item level and just like slap the boss. So you can see on a lot of early Mythic kills, there was strategies that revolved around dodging 2 or sometimes even 3 halos in the same set. So overall, I give this was about a 3 out of 5 out of 5, 3.5. Coming up on the next boss, Prototype Pantheon. This is a council-style fight where you have to deal with a lot of mechanics from different mobs, and then you have a massive burn phase towards the end, where you just need to kill all the bosses before you get overwhelmed by mechanics. And this was a pretty big challenge early on, because they nerfed the boss a lot since early progression, where you needed to kill all of the 4 bosses from 50% to 0, and it became a quite a tight DPS check, where you would bring multiple Affliction Warlocks, even where you don't really see Affliction being played almost anywhere else, because they were really good at killing the spread out ritualists that spawn. For the most part, I didn't really like this fight a lot. There's a lot of RNG involved with how the stampedes are spawning, the blue animals that run across the room, and it creates tries where you feel like, oh, I have so much space here, and then other tries where you feel like you're getting pushed into a corner and you can't really outplay it. Obviously, there is always a way to outplay the mechanic, but it felt a little random whether or not you were having a good try or a bad try. Overall, I would rate this probably a 2 out of 5. Not too hot on this one for me. Coming up on the tier bosses now, Lihuvim, the Principal Architect, is going to be the first one out. And this boss is actually insane. I really, really liked it, even though we didn't do too good on it on progression in terms of performance. The different options you have to choose what you want to play, to kill different ads in the intermissions, to spawn different ads, and knowing what combos are easier to deal with, how to deal with the different combos, where to position the moats. You saw a lot of different strategies on just the moat placement alone and how to clear them with bombs. For example, I believe Echo and Pieces did a really, really good job of placing them just behind the boss and then clearing all of the moats in like a set pattern with 2 bombs. We didn't end up doing that, but it just shows the different possibilities of how to deal with that one mechanic alone. The main mechanic, like the mythic mechanic of this fight, is when you get the cosmic shift and you have to find your different groups and make sure that you have at least, you need all the different, like the 2 different colors in each group. Doing that on the fly, it was good, but it was already done by a weaker, so you just needed to pre-position. I would be really curious to see how that mechanic would be played without a weak aura. That could be a fun challenge maybe for later. Overall, I really like this boss. I give it a solid 3.8 out of 5. Moving on to the big bad crab, Halondrus the Reclaimer. This guy was an absolute monster when Gil started slapping him the first time. He's incredibly unforgiving before nerfs, where you couldn't have the bombs get hit by any beams or moats, timing out, anything like that, and it became a challenge where you needed all of your raiders to play pretty much like not perfect DPS wise, but like perfect mechanics for like 8.5 minutes. And it's really hard to make everyone in the raid to do that for 8 minutes straight. And this guy took a lot of time for a lot of guilds. Some guilds still did really, really well on it. I don't remember how many tries we had, but I think it was over 300 wipes on this guy. Definitely the hardest mid-tier boss we've had in a very long time. A lot of people really like it though. I think it's a good boss, but I think it was a little bit too unforgiving for being a mid-tier boss. But still really cool to see them try new stuff. I really like the hot potato bomb mechanic and would rate this about a solid 4 out of 5. Coming up on Anduin Rin. This guy was a really, really cool fight. Very heavy on DPS management. You needed to allocate a lot of DPS cooldowns in different places. You needed enough damage to break all of the lost souls out from the people that were inside from the Kingsmorn at a specific time. You needed to have enough cooldowns to the inside Kingsmorn phase to kill all the ads. You needed enough healing and dispels inside to heal all the ads inside. Otherwise, there was no way to progress the fight. You needed enough damage in the intermission to kill the monstrous soul once it got below 40% HP, so it doesn't detonate on the entire raid and wipe you. And overall, just very, very heavy on like where to put your different cooldowns, both healing and DPS. It was a pretty good fight. Just a little bit disappointed that the stars were bugged early on, so we didn't really get to see the true difficulty of the last phase once people got there. And also a little bit of a letdown that you could fight the boss for like 3.5 minutes with only the tanks, because the boss has a 15-minute enrage, and there was pretty much no reliable way of keeping the raid alive beyond like minute 12. So then you just had 2 tanks doing the last percent for like 3 minutes alone. That was a little bit weird, but definitely a new way to end the fight. It's kind of a cool concept that you have people just dying off because the damage is so high, but you can still kill the boss. So I don't necessarily dislike that, but having only tanks alive for 3 minutes was a bit of a weird one. Would rate this one about a 3.5 7 to 8 out of 5. After you kill Anduin, you have the choice to go to Lords of Dread or Rygelon. So we're just going to go to Lords first. This boss was an absolutely monstrous DPS check before Double Legendary came into play in week 3. So in week 2, when a couple of guilds killed this boss, you were stacking as many Survival Hunters and Frost DKs as you possibly could, pretty much. You didn't even run a mage, you had 1 Warlock for Hellstones. It got the comps were pretty ridiculous, and you all needed to be geared. They changed this boss to make the Swarm Phase increase all damage done instead of only AoE damage, so now it's a little bit more forgiving in what classes you can bring. You're seeing like both Demonology and Destruction Warlocks being up there now because their abilities actually get increased by the damaging by the Swarm damage increase. But overall, like the comps that were brought early were really heavy on the melee cleave. It also means that the mechanics in range are easier to play with less people. So ideally you just wanted like 3 ranged healers and 1 DPS or something like that in order to make the fight as easy as possible. The mechanics of the fight are fairly simple. You have the same mechanics as Heroic. It's a little bit more hectic and fast-paced, but essentially it's just Heroic mechanics on steroids with an insanely tight DPS check, and the ability to extend the enrage with DKs, especially DKs with Necrolord towards the end, sitting in their Bonesmith Hammer, I believe, Soulbind cheat death ability for 10 seconds, and then the next person goes, and that the guy stays for in the enrage for 10 seconds. It makes you able to live in the enrage for almost a minute, which is quite insane for a boss this late. I feel like that might have been a little bit of an oversight to not have an insta-kill mechanic on this fight, which would make it essentially unkillable until you get Double Legendary. With Double Legendary, however, the DPS check was not nearly as tight, and you just needed to play the mechanics to kill the fight. Not a very engaging boss. It felt good to take it down, but I would rate this probably a 2.93 out of 5. And now coming up on what I think is the best boss of the tier, Rygelon. This guy was a heavy DPS and healer check, especially for the guilds that were able to kill it. I think only 2 guilds killed it before Double Legendary, and it was insanely tight. And big props to both Echo and Liquid that were able to kill this boss before Double Legendary. This was a crazy high both coordination and damage check, which you needed to min-max every single global that you did in order to make it happen. A very heavy damage intake. You needed really good defensive management for the soaks, and you needed really good damage management on the Quasars to kill them at specific times, so the people with Dark Eclipse could go into the Singularity to not detonate on the raid. Overall, it's a very much a rinse and repeat fight, but it's the kind of fight that you fight for like 3 minutes and it feels like it's been much longer than that. It's very intense, and I really liked it. We played pretty good on this fight. We killed it in 130 something pulls, which is fairly low. Then again, most of those pulls were almost all of those pulls were with Double Legendary, so that's going to lower the pull count a bit compared to some other guilds. But it's a really fun fight, and getting to this on Mythic is definitely going to be a highlight for a lot of Mythic raiding guilds. Give this a solid 4.8 out of 5. And now the big bad guy, the jailer himself, the main antagonist of the expansion. We have been tortured by him throughout the Maw for months and months and months. And now we finally get to face off and bring him down. It is a 4-phase fight on Mythic. It's a bit of a juggernaut. It's a very long fight. But what I really like about this is that it is extremely scripted to the second every time. Everything is exactly the same. The only thing that's different is when you get the different bombs that you need to go into the hole to not explode on the raid. but it's extremely scripted. Like every second is almost the same every time, and it's still hard. It's still a hard encounter. And I think that is really cool to see. A lot of the time in the past, there's been difficulties with spell queuing and randomness of the encounter, and that has made it difficult. But this is just like everything is super predictable, everything is the same, and it's still really hard. And I am a big fan of that. So I hope that they're going to do more of this kind of end bosses where it's scripted, but it's still really, really hard. I play Warlock on this fight, and Warlock was pretty busted. He wanted to bring 3, if not even 4 Warlocks on this fight if he could. Just did an absolutely insane amount of damage, especially to the Torment adds in Phase 3, where you just need to burst them down really, really fast. And having a Demonology Warlock with a huge implosion on it is just a massive amount of damage that you can pump out while doing really, really good boss damage as well. So obviously my take on this boss might be a little influenced by the fact that I play the good class, but overall there was a lot of different things that were really, really cool about this fight. That you have to heal Astaroth with the beam. If you miss a beam, then you're kind of screwed later on down the line, but you can still progress the fight. It was really cool that you could intentionally face the boss early. If you wanted to see Phase 3, you could just let the pillars go into the middle during Phase 2, and then you would see Phase 3 really early, so you can practice the mechanics of the fight. And it wasn't necessarily a wipe instantly. If you messed up, you could still go through a little bit of it and kind of get the muscle memory down. And that was also really cool. So very, very smart design choices here by Blizzard, I think, on how the mechanics interact with each other and how you're able to face the boss in different ways. I already said that Rygelon was my favorite boss of the tier, and I think that still holds true. But my favorite phase, if I'd like just one section of the fight, would definitely be Stage 3 of the Jailer. It's extremely fast-paced. Everything happens back to back. You have to watch your HP, your positioning, the baits, the soaks. There's so many things going on, and it's extremely hectic. And the first time you get there, it feels overwhelming to the point like, how am I ever going to deal with it? And then you learn how to progress it and learn better movement patterns. You learn how to anticipate it better. And eventually it becomes kind of like a dance where you feel like you're in sync with the environment that you're playing in. And that feels really, really cool. I think that overall, this boss is really, really good. And I hope to see a lot more M bosses like this. I rate this 4.5 out of 5. Talking a bit about the systems and what went into play for this progression, there was a big impact, especially on the second legendary coming out on the 3rd week. I don't think any of the top guilds planned on the race going that long into the 3rd week. So every guild did their testing and everything with like one legendary just to see, okay, we're not going to get double legendary anyway, so might as well see how much damage we can do with one legendary, how much healing we can do with one legendary, relative power and all that. And then we end up getting the second legendary in week 3, and that was a massive deal. And there was also a lot of raiders that didn't have the reputation to buy the high item level Unity legendary, so they were forced to play just a 265 Unity legendary on the belt with maybe suboptimal stats because it's forced into crit mastery, I believe. So that was a big impact on late progression. We ended up doing really well in week 3, and we ended up getting Jailer down, same reset as Echo did, just snacking the world second, but it had a huge impact with the raid going that long, and I would really like to see those kinds of systems, like double legendary and stuff like that, being available at the start of Mythic progression. Otherwise, you can't tune the fights to be hard with undergeared and only one legendary, but still killable. So then you're going to see these insanely long races again. If double legendary was available from the start, then it would be a lot smoother, I think. And you could also tune the bosses harder because of it. The BOE impact of this tier was extremely low. There was almost no BOE items, and very often they conflicted with tier pieces, and tier pieces was much more important. So BOE items were not really a thing. But that being said, tier sets was the big offender of this tier for sure. Getting 4-set on everyone required a huge amount of effort from not only the raid team, but people behind the scenes, people organizing the splits, people attending the splits. You needed enough helpers in order to trade you the tier pieces that you wanted, and I don't know if there's a good fix for it, but it had a huge impact, and you could see guilds that didn't get access to as many 4-sets early on were just severely lagging behind in output all the way until the next week, where by the second week you could pretty much guarantee 4-set on everyone through normal raids and stuff like that. But having full 4-set on the first Mythic week was something that we managed to do. Many thanks to the people behind the scenes, especially Turtle organizing splits. So big props to that guy. Obviously also Biff. Don't want to forget that. But it was a huge impact, and I hope that there would be a better way to ensure a little bit less randomness in the characters that you bring. Overall, I feel like this tier was a pretty good one. Obviously, we did end up getting a good rank. We got the second, and I'm really happy about that. I'm proud of everyone that's in the team, everyone that's working behind the scenes, everyone that helped out in splits. So thanks to everyone for being a part of it. Personally, I would rate this about a 7.5 out of 10, I think. I don't think it goes all the way up there in terms of quality, just because it was so incredibly long, and we didn't have access to double legendary from the start, which kind of made the tuning a bit wonky towards the later bosses. But some of the bosses themselves, especially Rygelon, Halondrus, Jailer, was really good. And I, as always, like, the bosses are usually insane when it comes to the raids. So let's hope that the systems follow along in Dragonflight. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. And if you want to catch me on any of my socials, it's twitch.tv/Sjele. If you don't know how to write that, which I'm going to guess is going to be a substantial portion of you, the links will be down below. So I hope to see you guys there, and have a good one.